Now we want to hear from all of you, our patients and caregivers again, on your perspectives for current and future treatments. So I'll invite our second panel up to the stage, panel 2. So to introduce topic 2 just a bit, don't be shy, panel 2, come on up. So to introduce topic 2 a little bit here, we're building on our conversation from this morning, where we discussed the burdens and impacts of living with chemotherapy-induced hearing loss. Now we want to explore the things that you do to try to treat, prevent, manage, live with your hearing loss. This might be drugs. This might be medical devices like hearing aids. This might be strategies that you employ, whether that be in an educational setting or in your personal lives, or some kind of lifestyle modification that you've had to make in order to make your, make it a little easier to manage living with hearing loss. So when we speak to this concept of treatments, I want you to think of it broadly. What we want to do is hear all of these different strategies and treatments that you use. We want your assessment of how well they're working. What's the benefit of these different strategies and treatments that you're employing in daily life? In addition, we also want to know what are the downsides to those treatments. Whether it's a drug and we're talking about a side effect, or I think we've already started to hear a little bit of from all of you about some of the downsides of hearing aids and other technologies, but even some of the other things that you employ, whether that be educational assistance plans or the like. We'd like to know what you view as the downsides of those treatments. And what we're going to do is hopefully establish where are areas of unmet need that need to be targeted for future therapies. And as part of that, we're going to finish our discussion by asking all of you your preferences for what it is, short of a cure for your hearing loss, that you would specifically look for a treatment or preventative product for hearing loss. So to kick off our discussion of topic 2, we have a panel. And actually, before we go to the panel itself, we have a fifth panel member who unfortunately was not able to be here with us today. Tyler, who was prepared with the rest of the panel, was very excited to be here. Unfortunately, had a post-surgical pneumothorax and was not able to travel. He had worked very hard on his testimony and was a bit frustrated to find out that he would not be able to travel here and be with us today. Despite that frustration, he pushed through and at our request sent us a recording. So we're going to start our panel with Tyler, but then here in the room with us, our other panelists who will follow are Jennifer, Mary Beth, Colleen, and Claire. So Tyler, via video, take it away.
I say that my hearing loss is what affects me most in my day-to-day life. I've lost the ability to understand speech from my left ear and have moderate to severe high-frequency loss in my right ear. Hearing loss affects me in so many ways in a social atmosphere like school. I find it difficult to know when someone is talking to me or when it's my turn to talk. I'm constantly embarrassed as someone will tell me their name when I meet them and I don't understand or hear what they said. I rarely will ask a second time and just pretend I heard. I have very few friends now that I'm hard at hearing, as I become somewhat antisocial and introverted. Prior to cancer, I was extremely outgoing and had many friends. I can't hear my friends when they talk, and I pretend just to say okay to be part of the conversation. I miss out a ton of information as a result. Learning in school and now at work has been very difficult. I miss words and conversation, and so I have to process and put together the puzzle before I understand what is being said. Now I learn at a slower pace than I did prior to my hearing loss. This is extra time, and processing also causes severe fatigue by the middle of the day at school or work. I find I am extremely exhausted and usually have headaches from concentrating so hard. I'm trying to comprehend and process conversations. My teacher's boss, coworkers think I look normal. My speech is good enough that I don't sound like I'm deaf. All this is what I call a silent disability. People judge me and think I do not need additional help or accommodation because of the way I look. This is extremely frustrating as I feel ignored and rejected when I do ask for assistance. Another problem with my hearing loss is that I've lost the ability to hear many sounds. I can't hear birds chirping, water falling, fans spinning, and alarms at the hospital or in my own home. I actually have forgotten that these sounds even exist anymore, even though I could hear them up until the age of 9. I can't wake up on my own because I can't hear alarms or cell phone sounds. I have to depend on my parents to get me up even though I'm 18. I find that I rely on my parents to wake me up, and if they are left for work, then I'm frequently late for work or school. I feel like I can't be an independent adult even though my physical age is 18. I'm also so dependent on others. I've always wanted to get my own place, but I'm so worried I won't be able to because I can't wake up in time for work and school. Because I can no longer hear these sounds as well as many other sounds, I find that I don't enjoy nature like I used to. I don't react or wake up to alarms and never know if there's an emergency around me. I have severe anxiety about the world around me, and if I should trust what I do hear, I can't trust what I see, and I am constantly reminding myself that I have to remember I cannot hear like a typical person. I'm on edge. It makes me anxious and sad. I wish people understood how much my hearing loss affects me everyday life as well, the ability to enjoy life in general. I find that I always try to stay away from cafeterias or loud environments because I can't hear anything that is being said. I find that I avoid people in general now, and this makes me feel lonely. I feel like no one understands what I'm dealing with. For example, my family and I recently went on a cruise ship to Mexico, and I got very anxious because I couldn't interact with the people around me. Instead of hanging out with kids my own age, I was limited to sitting by the pool with my parents. I wanted so badly to go to the arcade or teen dances, but I was too anxious that I would not be able to hear or hold a conversation with people that I did not know. Before my hearing loss, I was an active, happy, extroverted child. Now I find that I'm anxious or exhausted to enjoy new environments or activities. I am a lonely and typically anxious person. I'm a different person because of my hearing loss. I've told my parents many times that I wish I didn't live through my cancer treatment because of my hearing loss. It makes life so difficult and unbearable. My parents are telling me that I talk too loud to people in cars and in public, which can be irritating. I do this because I can't hear the sound of my own voice, as well as I can't hear the TV or computer and YouTube. I can't understand what is being said. I have to wear headphones or watch closed captioning to help. I think the bottom line is that I miss out on over 50% of what is being said to me in any given form. TV, phone, conversation, any of that. I feel left out and isolated, which makes me feel like I'm not part of this world. I'm sad about that. I feel like the loss of my hearing has been the same for about 12 to 18 years old. It's getting harder to remember what it was like when I did have normal hearing. I've forgotten what certain sounds sound like. For instance, I remember getting in an elevator in the audiology office after getting my new hearing aids, and I heard the ding of the elevator and asked my mom if it always made that noise. I think I've become used to my hearing loss, and it was very hard when I first got my hearing to accept that I lost it forever. I thought it would come back. Now as an adult, I know the reality that it won't come back, and I think over time I've adjusted to the cost. Or I've adjusted but at a cost. I'm no longer the person I was when I lost my hearing. I was a child. I believed that I could push through this, that I would get better. Now as an adult, I have a more realistic view, and I know that this is not going to get better. I know that I have to live with the rest of my life. I know that I will have to live the rest of my life. I know that I have a disability and that no one can see, and I am expected to hear whatever is being said to me. All of this is overwhelming and exhausting. I am told to advocate for myself as a goal on my IEP, and yet how can I advocate when I don't even have the information to do so? I once had a teacher that refused to repeat a sentence in class when I told her I couldn't hear. She refused and told me that I could figure it out on my own. How can I figure out something I didn't hear or understand? Many people ask, uh, why didn't I get a cochlear implant? I've decided I don't want brain surgery and I don't want a magnet stuck to the side of my head. I feel like I've been a guinea pig my entire life, poked, prodded, and now the next step is more surgery so they can fix a side effect of a drug that saved my life. These same drugs used to save my life in some way also took it away. I'm alive, but I don't feel like I'm alive because I feel alone and isolated in this quiet world that I live alone in.
Okay, I guess I'm next. Hi, my name is Jennifer Click. You heard from my daughter Carolyn earlier in the first panel. She was diagnosed with stage 4 high-risk neuroblastoma when she was 4.5 years old, and she went through one of the most aggressive treatment regimens for childhood cancer. She had 5 rounds of induction chemotherapy, an 11-hour surgery, more chemo and a stem cell transplant, radiation, and immunotherapy. 2 rounds of the induction chemo were cisplatin, and for the transplant, she had carboplatin. Within 2 years of completing treatment, she had profound high-frequency hearing loss. When your child is given a 30% chance of living, you don't really question what the doctors are doing. They tell you that the platinum-based chemotherapies will likely cause hearing loss, but they downplay it. They say, oh, the kids get hearing aids, they do just fine. And when you have a bald preschooler who's skin and bones and being fed by a tube, hearing aids and some hearing loss seems like a small price to pay for a chance to grow up. In the hospital, everyone had Carolyn's best interests at heart, and they did whatever they could to help her. But when we returned to the real world, it was different, because in the real world, everything comes down to money. Kids with high-frequency hearing loss need digital hearing aids that can be tuned to amplify only the missing ranges. Those hearing aids cost about $6,000 a pair, and as happens in many families, my health insurance wouldn't pay a penny. I appealed the decision, and I worked with an advocate for childhood cancer survivors, but the insurance company wouldn't budge. They just said, it's hearing aid coverage is just not in your policy. I had a colleague whose daughter was deaf, and she had gotten the cochlear implant from one of the leading doctors at Johns Hopkins. So I consulted him about an implant for Carolyn, but he said she had too much residual hearing, and that hearing would have to be destroyed, and the cochlear implant wouldn't compensate for that. Kids with hearing loss need speech therapy. Carolyn was luckier than a lot of neuroblastoma survivors because she was 4.5, so she was older, and her speech was pretty well developed, and so she didn't need intensive services. I requested an evaluation at the school and returned for the results to find myself on one side of a table and 5 school district personnel on the other side of the table. They told me how her deficits were developmental and she would outgrow them. I knew that they were typical of high-frequency hearing loss, and I did manage to convince them that she needed speech therapy. They agreed to 40 minutes a week. Eventually, her IEP did include speech therapy and some other accommodations for hearing loss and some reading issues she had. Whether the IEP was followed depended on the teacher. She was supposed to be seated at the front of the class near the teacher so she could hear better. One teacher arranged the desks in a U shape and put Carolyn at the bottom, so she was actually the furthest away. The school used a whole language reading curriculum, and even though our experts that were in our IEP meetings said she needed multisensory instruction, that's what they did. As 3rd grade started, she couldn't even read on a 1st grade level, and I was getting desperate because I knew that kids that can't read by the end of 3rd grade have very little chance of graduating high school or going to college. I hired an advocate, and I got Carolyn into the hearing impaired program at a public school about 10 miles from our home. The day I signed the transfer papers, the people at our neighborhood school looked at me like I was signing a death warrant. I didn't understand because the principal at the hearing impaired center had looked me square in the eye and told me that they used multisensory instruction. As it turned out, the principal just lied. The hearing impaired program was more like a warehouse for kids with disabilities. There was one kid in Carolyn's class who could barely speak, and she wore pull-ups to school. The kids weren't learning anything. The only place that Carolyn learned anything was in the mainstream classes of science and history, but those teachers never saw her IEP. I eventually got Carolyn into a private middle school that addressed her needs. She learned to read thanks to a specialized curriculum. The classes were small, so she didn't need preferential seating, and all of her teachers knew her and how to accommodate her disabilities. The school gave Carolyn extremely generous scholarships. Otherwise, I never would have been able to afford the tuition. But a lot of the damage had already been done by middle school. She caught up academically, but socially, she'll never be like her peers. Hearing loss causes her a lot of anxiety, especially in new situations. She went away to college last year, but the daily stress of living in the noisy dorms, eating in the noisy dining hall, working to keep up in class without calling attention to her disability, and trying to get professors to provide the accommodations she was entitled to was all just too much, and she withdrew. Now she's working full-time as a daycare assistant teacher. It's a great job for her because she loves babies and young children, even though she, like many neuroblastoma survivors, has premature ovarian failure and she'll never be able to get pregnant. People ask how much hearing improvement would be meaningful to her. I think that being able to go out without worrying that there's something behind her that she can't hear, whether it's a friend calling her name, a car speeding through an intersection, or a rapist creeping up behind her, would be meaningful. One night, we were talking about her late effects, and I asked if she could just fix one of them. What would it be? I was 95% sure she would say the ovarian failure because I know how much she loves kids and wants to have children. But I was really surprised when she said it would be her hearing, because her whole life would just be so much better if she could just hear. So I want to thank everybody here, the FDA representatives, the clinicians, the researchers, and our other cancer families. You're giving everyone here hope, and that is invaluable, so thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My son was diagnosed with neuroblastoma in 1999, and I am so grateful to be a part of this event today. At the beginning of his treatment, when discussing the side effects of the chemotherapy, I was reminded your child actually has to be alive to experience side effects. We are grateful for the survival, but our children are now living with those side effects, and often many of them. Hearing loss is a significant one because it affects almost every aspect of a person's life. You might not think about it right away, but your sense of hearing contributes to how we think about ourselves, how we learn, how we socialize, and our day-to-day functioning. When I found out my 2-year-old had moderate to severe hearing loss, all I knew was I just needed to do what was best for my son. I thought, well, I'll just get the best hearing aids that are available. Over the years, what a major investment that has turned out to be. Many people believe that hearing loss is pretty much the same as bad vision, and that hearing aids are like eyeglasses. A child can simply put them on and go about their merry way. Unfortunately, I have found out it just isn't that easy. I quickly learned that the aids don't completely replace the loss. We worked with a hearing therapist, and what I found out was that it was me, the parent, who was the most important support. There really aren't any other options. There aren't treatments that bring the hearing back. There aren't exercises. There are no specialists that I can send him to who could work with him to restore that hearing. It was just me, and I had to do more for him. So working with sounds, words, playing language games, all of that type of activity got added to an already long laundry list of jobs that I single-handedly had to fulfill. I was medical specialist, researcher, insurance caseworker, nutritionist, as well as mom. School quickly makes things challenging, and it gets harder from year to year. You aren't with your child all day, so you have no idea what they've missed. It makes filling in the gaps that much harder. No Child Left Behind was supposed to make all this easier, and instead, what it's turned into is another job for me. But Josh needed a variety of support. Preferential seating, notes for lessons, key vocabulary lists, copies of graphics that are used during lectures, advance notice for tests, and the FM system that helps him hear the teacher. School at best was average. Hearing aids are work. Reading lips are work. Trying to figure out what's happening by piecing together visual clues with word fragments is work. On the best of days, he would take a short break after he got home from school before diving into homework. But on the days when he was stressed, when he was tired, if he was sick, if he was struggling with some other side effect that he was struggling with, he might need hours of a break. On those days, the hearing aids were taken out before the shoes were even kicked off or that book bag was thrown in the corner. He had to choose between rest or communicating with the world. Getting back to the eyeglass comparison, I've explained to teachers that it's really a lot more like crutches. If Josh had 2 broken legs, he could get around the school with the crutches. He could be functional. But at the end of the day, he would be absolutely exhausted. And that's what it's like using hearing aids. What elementary school taught me as a parent advocate was that even well-intended teachers couldn't always focus on what the special needs were of my son, despite having a very strong 504 plan. I had to work harder to partner with them, making up for what he missed in school, at home. As he got older, he needed to learn more, and he needed to learn faster, and he just couldn't keep up. At this time, the hearing loss had progressed to profound, but now he also had heart issues, chemo-induced ADHD, and he was struggling with migraine clusters. High school was just indescribably hard. And then college, which was just way too difficult. And after a few weeks, it was obvious it just wasn't the right choice. Josh works so hard to try to be independent, but he finds workplace options lacking because of his hearing. Right now, he delivers pizzas while he's trying to develop his own business. And I am so incredibly proud of what he's able to do. He has constructed a life where he still is able to focus so much on what he can do, not on what he can't do. So in looking to an optimistic outlook about the future for our kids, I do believe that preventing the hearing loss in the first place is the best way to support our children. I'm happy and a bit envious, I admit, that parents may never hear the news that their child has hearing loss. Because as all of us here are aware, we all have so many children, so many survivors that do have hearing loss. They are teens, they are young adults, and they are still challenged with school, with work, with life. They're still surviving. I pray for a day when life just doesn't have to be so incredibly hard for our survivors, where they actually can thrive instead of just survive. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Colleen Movina, and I'm honored to be here today from Vancouver, Canada. At 10 weeks old, I was diagnosed with a cranial brain tumor, and I was treated with a high-dose chemotherapy, including cisplatin. 4 years later, it came back, it returned, and my sister was diagnosed. And now I suffer from severe to profound hearing loss. 25 years later, my son Jack was, when he was diagnosed when he was 22 months. As a result, we both suffer from degenerative hearing loss, and it continues to spiral down. When I first received cisplatin, I was the first child to receive chemo in BC, and there was no other alternative. Growing up, my hearing started to degrade around 14 years of age. I had been out of treatment for nearly 10 years at this point. It impacted me throughout high school years at this point, and in my early childhood education program, which I completed post-high school. While other students would either be presenting or speaking in a group setting, I struggled to understand what was being said. It prevented me from hearing my instructors as well as later on children in my care. When I started having my own children, I was presented with a new challenge, as often I was asleep, while I was asleep, I could not hear my babies, if my babies woke up crying. the high-pitched tone of the monitor made it that much harder to hear. And as a result, I developed insomnia, as with my husband working late hours. I was afraid to fall asleep in case of an emergency that I couldn't hear. Even while awake with the use of both monitor and hearing aid, it was difficult as I could not hear my children from another room. As they have grown, my oldest now being 9, I still find it difficult as I could not hear my children. As my children have grown, my adult, I couldn't hear them playing or having a good time, and then, and the noise and laughter would overwhelm my hearing aid. On occasion, I've tried removing them, but my hearing continues to deteriorate and is now at a profound loss. I can lip read a bit, but doesn't work well with active children. At night, I remove the hearing aid to go to sleep and am shut off from the world. And I need my alarm set at the highest possible volume to wake, and even that I can sleep through. In social situations at the playground and schoolyard, it leads to misunderstandings and missed opportunities, both for myself and my children. When my son Jack was diagnosed in 2013, we already knew about possible side effects of treatment due to my own experience as well as my sister's. We also knew that treatment could work, and it would be worth any risk to save our child's life. Our oncologist informed us of the potential side effects, including hearing loss from cisplatin. They told us, though, that since the treatment regime worked on me 29 years previous, that it was the best chance and would work on Jack. We knew the hearing loss would be a major hurdle due to my own experience growing up with it, as well as my experience raising children with compromised hearing. But what choice did we really have, as there were no options to reduce its effects? Close to the end of my son's 7 months of inpatient chemotherapy regime, they started his treatment plan. In regards to his hearing loss. This consisted solely of annual hearing tests to determine hearing range. Before treatment was finished, Jack had already begun to exhibit signs of hearing loss. A little over a year later, Jack's hearing had decreased some more, and he was outfitted for hearing aids to try to get him used to them in advance to him starting preschool and kindergarten. The hearing aids helped him in being able to hear better in quiet situations, but we quickly found that it actually hindered his ability to hear in group of people when more than one person is speaking at a time. Large crowds, like at sporting events and the movie theaters or at the mall, the hearing aids actually amplified all the surrounding noises, causing him pain and requiring removal of the device. When Jack entered into kindergarten, he was connected with a hearing resource teacher, as well as teachers used an FM system with a microphone around their neck. Unfortunately, when they were away and there were substitute teachers, the FM system was not used. But for the most part, as long as there was not much ambient noise, he was able to stay focused and hear what was going on. Over the course of the past 2 years in kindergarten, in grade 1, Jack's hearing has decreased, and this time, he's been more aware of it. When he's wearing his hearing aids and on the playground with his peers, he starts finding that his friends are getting angry with him. And he could not figure out why. Eventually, they told him because they thought that they were speaking and that they thought he was ignoring them. Since then, his friends have become more aware and realized he's simply just not shutting him. He just can't hear. However, he's becoming more self-aware of his diminishing hearing, and he is worrying more and more about how far his hearing loss is going to infringe on his life and what he's going to miss. Jack sees my struggles with hearing loss as it's far worse, and he's worried one day that he won't be able to hear at all. The current approach to hearing loss is not enough. And does not work in many situations. You're still disconnected from your own environment and in emergency and what's going on around you. In conclusion, I'd like to stress the importance of finding a way to put a stop to the ongoing degeneration of hearing loss as a result of cisplatin. We need to find a way to reverse the hearing loss so that Jack and current and future generations of children suffering from cisplatin-induced hearing loss can begin to lead a more normal life, to hear birds chirping, traffic bells, as well as voices of their loved ones. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Being here today is very humbling. We have travelled here from London, and honestly, when I was asked to come, I really did not have a good understanding of why. Not until I heard the other testimonies did I realise how affected other cancer survivors were as a result of their treatment. My name's Claire, and I'm here to tell you about my now 11-year-old son, Luke, who's back there, and how his story is very different as a result of having the opportunity to participate in a clinical trial. We are one of the lucky ones. 10 years ago, if someone had told me that I'd be sitting here telling you all our story, I would never have believed them. Luke was only 6 months old when I felt a hard lump under his rib cage whilst changing his nappy. I took him to our local doctor, and as he'd never had a patient with this symptom at such a young age, he sent us straight up to our local emergency department. Following an afternoon of blood tests and scans, they broke the bad news to myself and husband that our baby had cancer. We went straight to Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, and after a week of tests, they finally had a diagnosis for us. He had a very rare cancer called hepatoblastoma, a 10-centimetre wide tumour on his liver that affects only around 10 children a year in the UK and 1 in a million children worldwide. It was a very aggressive and fast-growing tumour, but thankfully it had not spread to other parts of his body. Once the diagnosis had been found, his consultant explained that the chemotherapy drug he needed was called cisplatin, which is extremely toxic and platinum-based. This meant that the side effects could be nasty and included short and long-term risks. The main side effect that concerned us was that it was likely that Luke would be left with some degree of permanent hearing loss, ranging from mild to severe. We were told that this would affect his speech development, his learning, and his academic achievements. Obviously, our main focus was to do everything we could to give him the best chance of survival, so we didn't hesitate to sign the forms, allowing our baby boy to be given this toxic chemical in the hope of saving his life. But the risk to his hearing really stood out to us. It isn't fair. Not only does he have to go through months of chemotherapy as well as surgery to remove the tumour, but there's also a good chance that, if he is cured, he'd be left with permanent damage that would affect him for the rest of his life. A constant reminder of his cancer battle. We worried at how this would affect his day-to-day life, his schooling, and his social interactions. We returned to Great Ormond Street the next day, and our consultant called us in. She explained that there was a clinical trial in its early stages called CHEMOTHERAPY-INDUCED that Luke was a candidate for. The trial would involve him being given a drug called sodium thiosulfate, or STS, which had the potential to reduce the risk of high-frequency hearing loss caused by the cisplatin by limiting the damage caused to the cells in his inner ears. However, she also explained that the short-term side effects of the STS could be nasty and were relatively unknown. She explained that if we allowed him to be on the trial, he would then be randomised into one of two groups, cisplatin alone or cisplatin plus the STS. We had no idea at that point which group he would be randomised into. The whole period of time has always been a bit of a blur due to the stress we were under, but I clearly remember discussing this with my husband, and we both decided that we had to give Luke the best possible chance of survival, but also if there was a chance of minimising this side effect, then we had to give it a go. We trusted the doctors and nurses and knew that he'd be in the best possible hands. We also knew that if the trial had positive results, then STS could become part of the treatment plan for children and adults who need cisplatin in the future. So we decided to go ahead with the trial, and shortly afterwards we were told that he had been randomised into the group that would include the STS. A glimmer of positivity during such a scary time. We were told that his treatment would include 6 doses of cisplatin and STS every 2 weeks. He had a baseline hearing test before treatment began. So the day after Boxing Day, after trying to enjoy Christmas with Luke and our other 2 children, we left home for his first chemotherapy. Thankfully, it all went smoothly. 6 hours after the cisplatin, an extra team of nurses came in and gave him the STS in a drip over a 15-minute period. This made him very sick. He immediately started vomiting, his blood pressure rose, and he was inconsolable. It broke our hearts, but we had to keep positive, knowing that this would be worth it in the long term. Thankfully, he perked up after the drip finished. These side effects happened during each of the 6 doses. Luke had regular hearing tests throughout his treatment to check for any immediate damage. As he was so young, these were difficult to do, but as far as the doctors knew, they all came back normal. Once he had finished his chemotherapy treatment, his hearing was still regularly monitored. He passed his most recent hearing test, which was 5 years ago, with flying colours. He hasn't shown any signs of late onset hearing loss, and he leads a completely normal life. He's doing well at school and excels in sport. He's also an elite gymnast. We are so grateful that he was offered a part on the trial, and we know that he is one of the lucky ones. Who knows what would have happened had he been selected into the other group, or if he hadn't even been offered to take part in the trial in the first place. Either way, he'd still be our Luke, and he'd still be our miracle boy, and we are so thankful for that. Thank you.
So again, I want to truly thank our panelists, Tyler and the 4 panelists that we have here today, for sharing your stories. Join me in a round of applause for the whole panel. And you guys can go. So now we move into our 3rd and final set of polling questions for the day to get your experiences and perspectives on approaches to treatment, current and future. So if we can pull up our first topic 2 polling question. So the question is, what is your experience in and perception of clinical trials for a new hearing loss drug? So this question is based off, although we're talking about current and future treatments, we also know that certainly in oncology, but as you've even heard from the panel, it's a different question that you're seeing on your phones. Is it what are you and your child currently doing? Okay, excellent. I thought perhaps they had gotten switched in order, so excellent. So in reality, our first question is, what are you and your child currently doing to help treat the condition or its impacts? Please select all that apply here. Your options are A, speech language therapy, B, hearing aids, C, cochlear implant, D, medicine to prevent or treat hearing loss, E, medicine for anxiety or depression, F, some other medication, G, educational accommodations and specialized plans, H, counseling and behavioral intervention, I, you're doing nothing currently, or J, you're using some other type of treatment for the hearing loss and its impacts. Oh. Okay, there appears to be a glitch where it's only allowing you to choose one. So let me see if I can reframe this into a single choice. Which of the following, and you are able to change your answers even if you've submitted them. So let's tweak this question. Which of the following do you feel has been, that of treatments that you have utilized, has been most helpful in treating this condition or its impacts? So treating the chemotherapy-induced hearing loss. Please select that treatment option which you believe has helped the most And you can select none if you feel nothing has helped. Okay, give you a few more moments to select which of these treatment options you believe has helped the most in treating chemotherapy-induced hearing loss or its impacts. All right, so currently, it looks like just under a third of you are saying that nothing has really helped to treat the chemotherapy-induced hearing loss. There's about a rising number that are saying about, I'd say about a quarter of you are reporting that hearing aids have been the thing that has helped the most. After that being educational accommodations and specialized plans. Others of you are citing speech-language therapy, medicines to actually prevent or treat hearing loss, medicines for anxiety and depression, and well, and that one disappeared, but so all of those others as things that have been the thing that have helped the most. No one is reporting other medications that aren't listed on the slide, counseling or behavioral intervention, or something else altogether that's not listed on the slide. Okay. All right. Looks like our total number is staying pretty constant, so let's move to our next polling question. So now we have our actual question on clinical trials. So here we would like to know your experience in and perception of clinical trials for a new hearing loss drug. The options are A, that you are currently participating in a trial, B, you have participated in a trial and would do so again, C, you have participated in a trial and would not do so again, D, you have not participated in a trial because you did not know about the opportunity, or E, you did not participate in a trial because you were not eligible. F, you have not participated in a trial, although you are aware of the opportunity. G, you would never enroll in a trial. Or H, you are not sure. And again, this is for clinical trials for a new hearing loss drug. And that could be either a treatment or preventative drug. Okay. So it looks like 3/4 of you have not participated in a trial for a hearing loss drug, and that's because you did not know of any opportunity to. Perhaps there was not an opportunity to. 15% have participated in a trial and would do so again. And then it looks like there's also some experience with not being sure about your perceptions of participating in a trial, and also some representation for those who did not participate in a trial, but it was because they were not eligible. So thank you for sharing that. Certainly your clinical trial experience and perceptions of that are important, as often is the case in areas where there are not a lot of treatment options. Clinical trials are de facto part of your standard of care. Can we move to our third question? So this question is, in general, how much do these, so all of these medical devices, equipment, medicines, counseling, and lifestyle changes, basically everything that we've talked about so far that you might have used to help treat and live with your hearing loss, how much do all of these things improve you or your affected family members' quality of life? A, in general, they have really helped manage the most difficult issues and improved my or my family members' quality of life. B, in general, they have helped somewhat in managing the worst symptoms and improved my or my family members' quality of life. Or C, in general, they have not helped much at all in managing the worst symptoms and have not improved my or my family members' quality of life. So please select the one that most applies to you in terms of how all of these different treatment options have improved you or your family members' quality of life. So it looks like we've still got some results trickling in. We'll give you a few more moments to get your result in here. Certainly during the audience discussion, we would love to hear why it is you chose these different categories in the context of which different treatment options and different strategies you've employed. Okay. So it looks like over half of you have felt that in general they've helped somewhat in managing the worst symptoms and have improved you or your family member's quality of life. About a third of you say that all these treatment options have not helped much at managing the worst symptoms and have not improved quality of life. And then there's just under 10% of you that say that these things have really helped manage these most difficult issues and have improved you or your family members' quality of life. So thank you. Can we go to our fourth question? So our next question is, how have treatment options for hearing loss changed since you or your affected family member first suffered hearing loss? So again, this is all of the different treatment options we've described: drugs, medical devices, educational support and modification, etc. So your options are: A, there have been no new treatment options; B, there have been some new treatment options; C, you do not choose to treat; and D, other. Give you just a few more moments on this one. Looks like overwhelmingly you feel that there are no new treatment options since you or your affected family member first suffered hearing loss. For some of you, just under a fifth of you, you feel that there have been some. There's some representation from those that do not choose to treat, and no one said other. And can we go to our final polling question on treatments? Okay. So please, this is one of those ranking questions, so please rank the following by the most important impact from a new treatment for you or your affected family member. So here we're talking about a future treatment, not a current treatment. So please rank the following attributes: whether the treatment is less toxic cancer treatments with reduced impact on hearing, improved hearing ability via device utilization, stopping further progression of hearing loss, recovering some hearing capability, and protective treatments to prevent hearing loss from cancer treatments, or some other aspect of a new treatment that you feel would be most important. We'll give you a few more minutes or moments because I know, like these other ranking questions, there's a lot to think about and consider. Looks like some more results are just trickling in right now. It looks like a few of these responses are neck and neck here. Switching spots. Someone out there just changing their answer back and forth. It's possible. All right. So based off the responses we have, it looks like the most important factor for a new treatment for those of you participating today would be to recover some of your hearing capability. I'll call it a tie between the next two, which are stopping further progression of hearing loss and protective treatments to prevent hearing loss from cancer treatments. Our fourth priority would be less toxic cancer treatments with reduced impact on hearing, followed by improved hearing ability via device utilization, and the final being something else that wasn't listed here that you view as a treatment priority. Okay. So now we move into our final portion of our session here today where we are seeking your input. You know how this goes. This is our audience discussion. Again, just a reminder, please raise your hand. We'll bring a mic to you. Please state your name at the start of your comment so we can keep track of who you are. If you participated in the morning, or not morning, but early the first session, please feel free to participate in this session as well, as we're going to be covering these new additional topics that build on that prior discussion. If you didn't have a chance to speak, definitely raise your hand. We'll try to make sure that you get a chance to speak as well and share your story. So the way that I want to dive into this is tackle some general categories of treatment options, one at a time. And so let's start with hearing technology. So hearing aids, cochlear implants, we've heard about other things, FM systems, maybe even other things that haven't really been discussed as much. I would love to hear your experiences with these different hearing technologies. Particularly, I don't think we've heard a lot besides some of Tyler's thoughts about choosing to not utilize cochlear implants. We haven't heard a lot of individuals with that experience and how your decisions to get a cochlear implant or not, and for those that have, how that's worked. So we have a hand up here in the front to get the conversation started.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline, and I'm an AML survivor. I lost my hearing when I was 12. I actually had bilateral cochlear implants. And actually, when I first got my first one, my parents wanted me to get it. I didn't want to at all because I was convinced I could hear. And I was actually doing a pretty good job for a year. And my experience has actually been really good with cochlear implants. It actually gave me a really good quality of life back overall. I got my first cochlear a week after my 14th birthday in 2004, and I got turned on a month later. I got chronic migraines shortly after that, every single day, all day long. And when I woke up in the morning, they were right there, right next to me. And it's been, one of those experiences. I have a vibrating alarm clock. I have different things in college. A hole started to burn through my scalp from the magnet in my cochlear. There's been just different side effects. My ears get sore. I can't sleep with the cochlears on anymore because of my skin sensitivity on my head because it burns holes in my scalp. But in general, besides the chronic migraines and the skin sensitivity, it's really given me this quality of life back that I never really imagined before. I have 4 different programs in my cochlears that I strategically create, where the first program is for everyday life, the second program blocks out background sound, the third program increases the volume, the fourth program turns out the back microphone. So in different types of environments and situations, I kind of navigate and figure out, okay, so where am I? Am I in a bar? Am I in a restaurant? Am I in a crowded place? And it still takes a lot of hard work, and I put a lot of effort every day into just trying to hear. And it's exhausting. It really is, even though, I have been able to recreate this sense of hearing, but it still has given me my life back to some sense, which is great.
So can you tell us a little bit about that improvement in quality of life, and maybe an example?
I mean, I definitely have people misinterpret the fact that I'm a hearing person. The quality of life, like I said, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I can't sleep with my earpieces on. I am already thinking, what do I do? Like, as one of the speakers said before, when I have kids, I can't sleep with them on what the baby monitor goes off. And, there aren't strobe lights all the time. How am I notified with a fire alarm and all this different stuff? But overall and generally, once my confidence built up, which wasn't right away, after I lost my hearing, there was a really good quality of life. The quality of sound with the cochlears is really good. And I did have hearing aids before I got the cochlear implants, and I couldn't really figure out what people were still saying. And that probably was because I was profoundly deaf and I just wasn't even accepting it. But there was just there's a quality of life that comes with getting cochlear implants that I'm really thankful for, and that's just really been great. And there's just something really great about it. I mean, the batteries die every once in a while. Sometimes while I'm watching Netflix, and I will get pissed off at it, and it'd be like, man, I'm in the middle of Orange is the New Black, and just beep, 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 and it starts to go off, and I have to change the battery. But I mean, overall, there's really not a lot of complaints I can make. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that experience. Others have experiences with different hearing technologies, maybe something we haven't already covered, or hearing aids. Yes, we have a hand right here.
Hi, my name is Katie. My son is a 10-year survivor of stage 4 hepatoblastoma. He's got bilateral hearing loss, and he's moderate to severe in his right ear and severe in his left ear. So he's got two different diagnoses as far as, what his hearing loss is. He's been to two different schools. The first school, we had a behavior plan and an IEP and a 504 plan all set up, different time frames, and none of his teachers at that school would follow it. They got him an FM system, they wouldn't wear it. He's now in his new school, and he's in 5th grade, and they've started now, let's add a couple teachers. So not only does he have to worry about the FM system for one teacher, is it going to follow him when he goes to the next class or the next class? So they're working on already, what are we doing for middle school? What are we doing for high school? And he doesn't understand that, he's got to take it off, or it kills his batteries a lot faster. So we have to go through more batteries. It's a great system, but at the same time, there's still so much that he's missing. He's not getting everything the teachers are saying. He's not hearing what someone behind him is saying because they're not wearing the FM system. So he still does lose a lot, but it has helped him as far as his school goes. You can't tell with his grades that, he's got a hearing impairment or that he has a learning disability because of the hearing impairment. He's a high honor student, and the only thing that it's preventing him from doing is hearing everything else. So he's got his teachers, but he doesn't have his classmates. He doesn't get that part of the instruction.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right here.
So this is an FM thing that is not necessarily, not necessarily always good. My mom mentioned that I was in a class with a bunch of other hearing impaired kids. So we all used an FM system. Our teacher wouldn't always turn it off when she was in the other room or talking to someone else. So I was in 3rd grade, and we were at lunch, and we all heard our teacher talking about how annoying we are and how much she hated us. So there was a bunch of 3rd graders sitting there going, oh, our teacher hates us? Oh, okay.
Not very helpful. No.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Unintended consequences of an otherwise helpful technology. Other thoughts on technologies? Yes, Kim.
I'm Kim, and I started using an FM system in high school, and I used it in college for a while. I did, so I had to carry it with me and give it to my teacher at the beginning of each class. At the beginning, it was kind of, I was self-conscious about, walking up to the teacher, giving him this device, and other students didn't know what it was, so then I had to decide if I wanted to, explain it or just let them wonder. And then some teachers would forget to turn it on at the beginning of class, so I would have to raise my hand and, kind of be like, can you turn the thing on? And so they would turn it on, and then I'd have to remember to get it back at the end of class. So, it is hard for teachers to remember when to turn it on and off. In college, I used it a little bit, but, so in high school, I guess, I didn't sit in the front as much because I was at a nerdy high school and everyone actually wanted to sit in the front. So it was harder. But in college, I found that there was always plenty of room in the front, so it wasn't as much of a problem. And I also have a hearing aid in my left ear. My right ear is deaf, and a hearing aid would not help. So the hearing aid helps a lot, but as everyone else has said, it doesn't make up for everything. It only helps in certain situations. And then I also now have a Bluetooth-enabled hearing aid, which I use for phone calls at work and conference calls. So that's very helpful because the other option that I've done before is using an earbud in my left ear, which actually works. And I can hear pretty well if I put an earbud in my ear. But then that makes me really anxious because once I have my hearing aid out and an earbud in, I can't hear anything else around me. And so I worry about, missing something in my surroundings. So the Bluetooth enables me to still have my hearing aid on and connect to a phone call. And then the same thing like on the, if I'm riding on the metro and listening to music, I don't want to put an earbud in and block out all the sound around me. So the Bluetooth is also useful for that. Of course, Bluetooth-enabled hearing aids are expensive, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford them, but technically they're covered by my insurance company, but at a very low rate and only one set of hearing aids ever. So they don't seem to understand that hearing aids do not last forever, and they cost more than the amount that they're willing to pay for them. So.
Sure. Thank you. So let's broaden the conversation to, if you'd like, include educational support and modification. We've already heard a good deal about this from our panels, but I would love to hear from you, your experiences with these different strategies in the classroom or to supplement the classroom, things that might have worked, any downsides of some of these strategies, anything to add on to what we have already been discussing. Yes.
Hello, my name is Billy Reagan. My son Zane was diagnosed with a brain tumor when he was 10 months old. As you can tell, he's almost 20. He was diagnosed 20 years ago this month. And so it's definitely dear to my heart right now. When he was first diagnosed, he had 2 cranies. He had traditional chemotherapy, conventional, and also stem cell transplant, where he did suffer hearing loss. He was 16 months old, thought the brain tumor was gone. It was not. It came back at 22 months, and we lived near Kansas City, great hospital, Children's Mercy, told us that there was nothing else we could do. It was time to take him home. He probably would have about 3 months to live. And at the time, I looked at him, and he was fine. I mean, he was running around, he was playing, and I just didn't think that we were ready to give up. And so we looked into radiation, not something he could take because of his age. So we were fortunate enough to find blood-brain barrier disruption in Portland, Oregon, which I'm going to toot Dr. Newell's horn, because right here the doctor that I feel saved my son's life. But what I'm here to talk about is at that time of the blood-brain barrier disruption, we were a part of the sodium thiosulfate trial drug. Zane did not have any more hearing loss while he was on the same drugs. Blood-brain barrier disruption is the same platins, both cisplatin and carboplatin, and they just give the chemotherapy directly to your brain. They go in, they break down the blood-brain barrier with mannitol. And so he was able to do that. He received the sodium thiosulfate, I think it was 4 hours afterwards and 8 hours afterwards. He had no side effects. I know they talk about throwing up as being one of the side effects. I cannot remember Zane having that side effect at all. I remember his tumor shrinking. I remember that, and I definitely now can look back and think that, yes, he has hearing loss. And all the things that we're talking about in here, the FM transmitters, the expense of the hearing aids. He has Bluetooth now. I'm surprised he's not on his phone watching a movie. Sorry, he can hear through those Bluetooth hearing aids. He likes to do that a lot. We did do all those things, and they're helpful. They're helpful for us. But I think back to if we'd have had that drug from the very, very beginning, would Zane have had his hearing? And I look around and I see these, he's almost 20 years old, and I see these younger kids in here. They're 16 and 10-year survivors, and I think, if we'd have had that drug, this has been 17 years. We made the Wall Street Journal 17 years ago for this drug. And I think, what about now? Right now is when we need it. 17 years is too long to let it go and to not have have access to it. If there were severe side effects, we all had those. We all know what severe side effects are. And we lived with that when we decided to give our kids chemotherapy and the surgeries. But sodium thiosulfate doesn't have those severe side effects. And like I said, once again, we're thankful. I'm thankful that he's here. He's well. He doesn't have other side effects. He's not on any medicine. We're one of the few lucky. Yeah, he had a primitive neuroectodermal tumor with rhabdoid areas, which is very hard to treat. Like I said, they looked at us and told us to go home with him. And lucky enough, like I said, to be able to find Dr. Newalt and to do the blood-brain barrier disruption, but also to be a part of the clinical trial that I felt has helped his hearing, helped him lead a normal life, and I hope that soon everyone else has the opportunity to have that drug that I felt helped with his hearing loss. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's keep going with more experiences with different treatment options.
I just had a question about SDS, right? Can you give that after there's already been hearing loss to stop the progression? And how does someone find out how to do that?
Right here, afterwards, right here is who you need to be talking to. I'm just going to toot his horn again.
So for now, we're just exploring patient and caregivers' experiences. So, but I'm sure everybody's happy to stay around and discuss possibilities. But if that's a priority for future treatment, that's going to be my next question of, being able to stop progression. If that's the key for you, please do share that.
2 seconds, because I feel like I should just add one thing. The sodium thiosulfate, and they haven't touched on it now, but I know from this article 17 years ago, it also helps with platelet loss. And when Zane was on treatment, the conventional chemotherapy and the stem cell, we were in the hospital. We were neutropenic. We're in the hospital every other day to have platelets and blood. I mean, we didn't leave. We lived in Kansas City at the hospital. When we were in Portland, we didn't get blood or platelets at all. So sodium thiosulfate is also in a trial now, and I think Dr. Newalt's a part of that, looking into it for platelet loss. So it's just a very valuable drug.
Thank you. Okay. So we have opened the world of opportunities here. We've got hearing technology. We started to explore a little bit educational support and modification. Of course, investigational products. Again, when there's that unmet need, often very much a part of standard of care. So I would love to continue to hear experiences.
I know I shared earlier, so you know what we're going through at my house. I'm getting texts from my son because I told him, I said, do you know that there are some companies out there who care more about your hearing loss than even you do right now? And they're working to protect it. They're working on new drugs to try to restore it. I said, there's some hope out there for you. And he was asking me about that because that's what he needed to hear. He needed to hear that there are people out there. So I'm so thankful for this opportunity, for this conference. Last year, I attended the International Oncology Group here and heard where one of the sponsors who's here today presented some of their trial findings. And I have been referring every new diagnosis to them because it's too late for them if we wait another 5 or 10 years, especially for some of these drugs that have been around that my son, if we had had that opportunity, many of the oncologists aren't, until it becomes something out there, mainstream, they're not going to do it. So we need to get these options to parents, because if I had been given that choice, we had that same choice with growth hormones, and my son has chosen to take growth hormones, even if the risk is higher to make his tumor come back. He's old enough to make that choice at this point, and we were old enough to really counsel him in it. I would like to see where parents are given the option to say, here's the risks, here's the benefits. You need to be aware, but you also need to have some of the control over the choice. I'm not being given the option to poison my son drastically, but I at least want to be given the option to maybe protect him in some way as well, along with that choice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, knowing what it is that either you wish you had or that you would like for the future are very important preferences for us to share with FDA and those developing drugs that might even be, maybe not something that's been around a long time, but even, earlier stage, so that way they can know when they're developing their studies, what are the right things that we need to measure in order to make a product that is going to be beneficial for patients and improve the quality of life that we've been discussing here today. So I want to look, and I know we're a little short on time. Any final experiences with a different treatment option that you would like to share? And we have a hand right here.
Hi, it's Anna again. With the treatment options, I guess just, being in front of the FDA, I just want them to hear in general a very personal situation that I went through that makes me think about any type of treatment or looking into anything is going to be valuable, because I thought with the scenario I'm about to explain real quick, I thought I was kind of a one-hit wonder with it until 2 weeks ago when I took my son Jaden to a cancer camp and spoke to a mom for 2 hours that is going through the exact same thing. So because of this drug, cisplatin, when my son, he was diagnosed with 6 brain tumors with medulloblastoma. So 3 could be removed, 3 could not. So it was very intense. Had to have immediate brain surgery too, back to back. So the cisplatin out of 3 chemos had to be the most aggressive and the riskiest one. Of course, that's going to make him lose his hearing. We knew the consequences. But about a month or 2 going into his treatment, I guess on the other side of the treatment to be aware of, we had a doctor, his oncologist, that had suggested, not thinking that my son had a big chance to make it, actually wanted to stop the cisplatin and just so he can retain the hearing for the quote-unquote rest of his life. That was a huge decision just for this one drug. So as a parent, you're listening to the doctor saying, so because you think my child is going to die, let's just have him here for the rest of his life. So it became a debate just for this one drug. I think about other parents that now are possibly maybe going through it. I did not stand for that. I went and got my second opinions, which because of this drug took a lot of finances, because no insurance company, you guys know prior authorizations and money and everything involved, they're not going to want to cover any of these costs. So traveling to Seattle Children's Hospital from Portland, and I want to say this is not a doctor over at Dornbecker, this is a doctor using Dornbecker OHSU facilities, because the insurance company and services we had did not have a pediatric oncology program there. So with this doctor stating that I took my second opinion with Seattle Children's Hospital, was able to get a second opinion, and they said to continue the cisplatin, because regardless of his hearing, this is his life. And that, in the end, is the most important, but it makes me wonder if I went through that just because of this drug and a doctor thinking my son did not have chances to live and just wanted to treat his hearing and have his hearing be full on for the rest of his life. Like, what other parents or families or children are having to go through this? And the only reason, like I said, I bring it up is because 2 weeks ago, a mom is on the same boat and, unfortunately does not have the advocacy support, does not have the finances to do this, and is kind of stuck. So it's really concerning about, this kind of drug. So I think just anything in general to just be looked at, to just take away of that in all perspectives,
To not have to make
to
that
just
choice.
not have to make that choice and go through that.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for sharing that. So with, I think we probably have time for one or two more comments. I want to pose the question, since we've started to go down that path anyways. Short of a cure for your hearing loss, what would be the one or two specific things that would be most important to you from a future therapy? I see a hand right here.
Hi, my name's Christopher. My wife and my son both have hearing loss due to the cisplatin. It's made life incredibly difficult at home over the last so many years. I think the biggest thing for us is stopping the degradation, the ongoing hearing loss. Earlier, Christy Knight mentioned that in the long-term follow-up, something with regards to the opening of the cochlear, dealing with the high frequency loss, then the ending of the cochlear, dealing with the lower frequency loss, and the degradation moving downwards through the cochlear. And just the fact that that's happening still, and they're not receiving cisplatin right now, that means that the platinum's still there in their bodies, but why is it still there? And why aren't they doing anything to clear that out of their system? That would seem to be the most simple thing to do. If there's things out there that can take platinum out of a body, why not put that in and take it out of their body?
Sure.
And then, ongoing hearing loss. That's like my son, he's 7 years old, he's in grade 2. He worries every day, he cries a lot. He's worried that his hearing loss is going to leave him completely. Over the course of 2 years at school, he's lost amount of hearing loss. He had great vocabulary. His older sister taught him everything before treatment at 2 years old. But you can tell that he's losing it. He's losing his vocabulary. He's losing his ability to say words. He's in speech therapy now because he didn't used to need to it. Even in kindergarten, he had perfect pronunciation. But now in grade 2, he cannot pronounce letters. He's lost that ability. So he needs the ongoing progression to stop. Even if it's not restored, at least stopped before it can be restored.
Thank you. Okay, any final thoughts, final comment? Josh will be our final word.
So, at least everybody that I know here that was a cancer patient has gone through the use with hearing aids. The only issue I find with hearing aids, besides the other many issues everybody else has already explained, is the easy use for the consumer. We have to constantly buy batteries. We have to constantly go to the hearing aid office and have them plugged in to regenerate what will better improve your hearing. What I would hope would come eventually is everybody has smartphones. Why not make an applicable Bluetooth version of a hearing aid that you can thus change and improve yourself? Being an audio engineer student, you learn a lot about EQ, a lot about all the technology that they use to develop hearing aids, but before my audio engineering classes, why wasn't I ever taught any of this stuff? If I'm the one who's experiencing all of this, I should be the one with the output as to how to change and better it. But if I have no experience with such technology, I would have no way to give somebody that experience. I just hope that, eventually, if this does continue and we can't find a treatment that will effectively dismember this, at least there'll be a better way to control it through everybody.
Thank you so much.
Good idea, honey.
So this concludes the portion of the agenda where we are getting all of your views, all of your input, your preferences, but it's not the end. As I mentioned at the beginning, there will be an opportunity for you to provide written answers to many of the questions we walked through today. All of you that registered will get instructions on how to submit those comments, and we really hope that whether you're in the room you had something you wanted to say, we just didn't have time. Maybe it's something you think about on your drive or flight home. For those of you that are on the webcast who have been stuck it out with us all afternoon, certainly we want to hear from you as well. I just want to end, because this is the final part of the agenda that I'm involved with. I just want to say that, reiterate something that Kat said at the onset, which is that it is incredibly difficult to share the burdens of survival. And I don't think I could have appreciated that as an outsider to this community before being here today. So I just want to thank each and every one of you here in the room that sat up here on this stage and shared your story, raised your hand and shared your story, for allowing me to be a member of your community for a day, or for the panelists for a couple of months that we've been working together. And for really, thank you for bearing your souls to all of those that were here listening today, to FDA, to those that are working tirelessly to develop products, to help all of you. I really, truly hope that you'll walk away feeling as though you had an important impact, because I know, having been involved in this arena for some time now, that you truly will have had an impact on product development and product review and decisions at the FDA moving forward. So join me in thanking all of you with a collective round of applause.